Good morning, listeners of the Real Stuff podcast. Good morning, listeners of the Real Stuff podcast. Thank you very much for joining us again. And today we have with us as our featured guest, Mr. Peter Espeut. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, my brother. Morning to your listeners.
Yes, and we will be speaking about land and the community, people's rights in Jamaica. I know he's an environmentalist, so he knows quite a lot about this type of stuff and where we are definitely at today. So, Peter, if you could start out by just giving our viewers just a brief thing about you, and then you move on into our topic, please.
Well, you are introducing me as an environmentalist. I don't know how that is going to help us with the discussion today
Sure. Yes.
about land. But yes, I have worked in the environment. I've worked in rural development. I'm really a specialist in fishing, fisheries, and the fishing industry, particularly the artisanal fishermen, but also small farmers, peasants. This is what rural development is all about. My other training, before I went into development science, my first degree is in chemistry. So I'm really a natural scientist. I start off with chemistry and zoology. And then, of course, I am a clergyman. I'm really Reverend Peter Espeut. I don't insist on the Reverend.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It's all right. Never mind. I'm in charge of two churches, one in West Kingston and one in Southeast St. Andrew, St. Anne's Church. But we discussed this before, you and
I. Yes.
St. Anne's Church on the corner of Oxford Street and Percy Street, and the Holy Name of Jesus Church in Greenwich Town.
Okay.
On East Avenue. So I am an inner city pastor, if you want to say.
Yes. And a rural developer.
A rural development scientist, not developer.
Yeah.
Meaning that I buy land and cut it up and that kind. Yeah. That's not development.
Yes.
That's a different kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
No, but in addition, my substantive job though, I am the Dean of Studies at the Catholic Theological College.
Okay.
So I'm in charge of the training of Catholic priests, the academic part of it, and we have maybe 100 other people in training academically at the college.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. So, how will you approach this topic today? Because, I mean, this topic, this type of thing, it has been very frequent in our news of recent times. Right. In a lot of different ways.
Yeah, well, I gave it a lot of thought since you invited me. And I guess this is more a topic for a historian than an environmentalist. Mm-hmm. Because this whole business of land really has to do with conquering armies, invading other countries, or invading what they would say would be unoccupied land and claiming it.
Yes.
And so the question is, where do rights start? So even if we go back to the Bible, to the Old Testament, the Jewish people believe that their God gave them the land of Canaan. But the land of Canaan was occupied by all sorts of people. And so when Joshua and his people crossed the River Jordan, they came upon the city of Jericho. They had to, if they were going to take up this land that they say God gave them, then they have to expel the people that were living there.
Yeah.
And so we have that now as a precedent where, of course, Joshua won the Battle of Jericho by having the walls of the city come tumbling down by whatever means. and they ran all the people out of the place. So this has been going on for thousands of years. This incident would have happened probably 3,000 years ago. And it wasn't the first incident of its type. And we know that in Europe, for thousands of years, peoples of one white tribe have invaded the land of other white tribes to capture them. That's basically what Hitler was doing when he invaded Czechoslovakia and elsewhere. The idea that might is right, that rights come from the strength of your army. And so you subtitle the talk, People's Rights in Jamaica. Well, who has rights? According to our monarchical system, and we are in a monarchy.
Yes.
We're in a monarchy not because Queen, I was going to say Queen Elizabeth, but of course it's King Charles.
King Charles, yes.
Not just because King Charles is head of the state. We're a monarchy because in a monarchy, the king owns all the land.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And so people don't have rights over land as such. It's the crown that has the rights over land. And so when the other King Charles, well, this is King Charles III, but in the days of King Charles I and King Charles II, Cromwell, the Lord Protector, it was his invading army that captured Jamaica from the Spaniards.
Okay, yes.
And then Jamaica became English, but before that we were Spanish. How did we become Spanish? Because in 1509, the King of Spain, King Ferdinand, along with Christopher Columbus's son, sent people to St. Anne's Bay. He didn't call it St. Anne's Bay, he called it Sevilla Nueva, to take up residence in Jamaica and capture it from the people who are living there, the Tainos.
Yes.
And so land rights, the history of land rights, not just in Europe, but in the world, has to do with who can conquer and claim the land. The same thing happened. The Mongols, of course, were a Chinese people, and they invaded and captured land. Within South America, you have the Incas and the Aztecs and the Mayans, and they were constantly invading each other's territory and capturing land. Of course, Jamaica was inhabited by the Tainos, and the Tainos came and found the Siboneyes, land from them. And then the Caribs were coming along from the east, capturing land from the Tainos. So I don't want it to look as if this is something that started last year or even 100 years ago or at emancipation. This is something going on for thousands of years. The fact is that conquering nations are able to claim land. And at the same time, conquering armies, capturing land, also capture the people in the land and turn them into slaves.
Oh, yeah.
This has been going on for thousands of years. This didn't start with the English bringing slaves to Jamaica. This was going on before. It's in the Bible. In biblical times, there was slavery. And so, as I say, my brother and listeners and viewers, this topic is history, you know. This is not environment. We are talking something that has been going on for thousands of years. That doesn't make it right, but we just want to put it into perspective that the people that had the armies, they were the ones with rights, and they were the ones with the land. And so that is how I wish to begin the discussion. I leave it to you now to decide how we take it from here.
Well, we can, we can just switch back to today and see the comparison. Because basically what you're saying, all the land is crown land owned by the king. So the
No, well,
government,
it started out that way.
yeah,
It started out that all land was crown land, and then it was within the king's power to grant land to who he wanted.
yeah,
And so Oliver Cromwell, who was the Lord Protector at the time of the capture, he gave land to the soldiers who helped him to capture Jamaica.
hmm,
And you might not know some of the soldiers' names, but I can help you.
sure,
One of them's name was Elliotson, and his mother was Hope. And so you have Hope Estate, you have Ellison Flats, you have General Tom, Gregory Tom, and Tom's River in St. Mary was given to him.
okay,
Not to mention Cromwell land, which is near to Highgate in St. Mary, which
yeah,
Cromwell took for himself.
yes,
And there were other people in his army. There were the Longs, and they were given Longville Park. In fact, Catherine Long was the first to climb Catherine's Peak,
okay,
and it was named after her, Catherine Long. So I'm trying to explain. It started out that all the land belonged to the crown, the king, and the king gave land to who he wanted. And they were called land grants or land patents. And it was the powerful people that got the land, and they didn't get 5 acres. They were given large acreages because the idea was to establish plantations. And then, of course, you had to, who was going to work the plantation? At first, the Spaniards tried to get the Tainos to work it, but then they died off. So you had to bring Africans from Africa to do it. But the Africans weren't given land. Africans were given to the English people to work their land. So eventually now when they decided to free the slaves, for whatever reason, in 1834 and 1838, all of these tens of thousands of people came free, but no land.
yep,
Whereas the slave owners had all the land. And so you can't jump from this to the present day, you have to look at the history of it.
yeah, yeah, sure,
And so what were the slaves to do? The idea was to force them to work back on the plantation. So if they didn't have land, then they couldn't leave. And so the government of the day tried its best to prevent black people from getting land. But it was the churches, I would say the nonconformist churches, the Baptist Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Moravian Church, that bought abandoned estates, cut them up, and sold them to the former slaves. And so you get free villages. Everybody knows about Sligerville, the first free village, but there are many others. Porus is another one. And Lionel Town, all sorts of free villages across Jamaica. Hundreds of them. Started by missionaries providing land to people. Because they didn't have, when they say providing, they didn't provide it, they had to buy it,
yeah,
Reverend Burchell in Montego Bay, Reverend Filippo in Spanish Town, Reverend William Nabe in Falmouth and Duncans. They were selling land to black people and giving it away. And the former slaves who were industrious people, they sold their crops and they bought their land. And so for the first time, you begin to see black people owning land. But not every black person was able to get land. And so you had the beginnings of what we call a peasant elite who had land, but the vast majority of black people who didn't have land. And what were they to do? They captured land. They captured land in the hills, but they also captured land in the towns. And that has been going on for 200 years. Now, when Castro took over Cuba in 1959, one of the first things he did was land reform. He took away the land from the big American companies that had most of the big land in Cuba, cut it up and gave it to Cuban peasants to start farming. But our government has never really done that. We had what we call land settlement in the 1930s, where the colonial government of the day, after the Moyne Commission report, they cut up properties and created and gave and sold them to people, starting with Kellets in Clarendon and all sorts of other places. I found a document the other day that listed 60 land settlements that came out of the Moyne Commission. But again, people had to buy the land, and not everybody could buy the land. And to this day, many of those people never got the land. And then Michael Manley tried something. Again, he couldn't really take away the land from the white people, so he asked them to lease it to him on long term. So we got Operation Land Lease.
Yes.
And again, thousands of acres were cut up and leased to people. It was not a sale arrangement. Many of them had to give back the land when the lease expired. So what I'm really trying to say is that we have never in our history, in the 500 years of history that we are aware of after the Spanish came here, we have never dealt with land rights. Land has been basically the property of the crown. The crown gives it to who they want. In the end, the land has ended up in the hands of big people. The big people have protected their land by preventing squatters on it. And various governments, whether we're talking JLP government, PNP government, have not sought to deal with the question of land. And that is where we are today. That we can blame the Englishman if we want, but the Englishman has been out of here for 60 years. There comes a time when you have to stop blaming the Englishman and you have to start blaming Jamaican man.
Yes, yes.
Because neither the JLP nor the PNP government has properly dealt with the issue of land in all our years of independence and previously.
So what kind of way forward are you seeing?
Why you put that burden on me, my brother? You want me to provide the solution to the problems of the country?
Oh, yes.
No, sir, don't do that. Don't do that to me.
Okay.
The fact is, if the land, most of the land is not abandoned, meaning to say it's not land that doesn't have an owner, you know. There is quite a bit of crown land still in the cockpit country, and of course they want to dig up the cockpit country for mining.
Yes.
There's a lot of crown land in the Blue Mountains, and there's all sorts of people trying to chop down the forest to plant coffee. So I don't know, just because land is crown land doesn't mean it's safe. It doesn't mean it's going to be protected, that the environment, this is where environmentalist comes in. Because we environmentalists want natural forest to remain.
Of course.
We don't want every tree to be cut down and coffee planted or something like that. So you've got to protect thousands of acres of natural forest. Because of course, we're all talking about climate change. There's a big climate change conference going on right now. COP meeting, the Conference of the Parties. And we're all concerned about global warming because carbon dioxide is flooding the atmosphere. Well, what the forests do is they take out the carbon dioxide and put in oxygen instead.
Yeah.
And that's done in forests. So you would think that if all the forests in the cockpit country, say in the Blue Mountains, in the Jonker Mountains, are in the hands of the government, they should be safe. But no, the government is the biggest destroyer of natural forests. They are the ones trying to give away the land to the bauxite companies. They are the ones trying to make it available for coffee. And so land remains with the crown. And the crown, of course, we put a lot of blame on Queen Elizabeth, but she didn't do anything. She's a figurehead. The real power in Jamaica is not no governor general. The real power is the prime minister.
Yes.
And the parliament of the country, the cabinet of the country, the judiciary of the country, and our government, all three branches of it, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, have really been on their own path, not seeking to take people out of poverty, out of illiteracy. Why is it that here we are 60 years after independence and between 40 and 60% of children that leave primary school can't read?
Yep.
No, at a point you could say that it's the Englishman's fault, because that's the system he put in place. He didn't want black people to read because he wanted them to cut cane. And if they could read, they wouldn't come and cut cane. So he purposely never made them able to read. No high school was put in any sugar cane era. That is why Trelawney never had a high school for boys until after independence. The boys had to go to Montego Bay or Brownstown to go to school.
Okay.
There was no high school in Trelawney. The only high school in Trelawney at independence, you're supposed to know, was at Lovely School in Stewarttown. The one that where the ladies still wear the straw hats.
Okay.
I'm talking about, oh my gosh, what's this school in Stewarttown? Westwood High School.
Westwood, yes. Westwood, yes.
That was the only high school in Trelawney. No boy could go to high school in Trelawney, You had to go outside of Trelawney. Because under the English, they didn't want the boys to go to school. They wanted the boys to cut cane. Same thing in the parish of St. James. You had one high school for boys only. That was Cornwall College, and that was relatively recently. The two schools, other schools were both for girls. Montego Bay High School for girls and Mount Alvernia High School for girls. So boys had a hard time going to high school, In the big sugar parish of St. Thomas, it was 1961 before they got their first high school, which was Morant Bay High School, started by the Methodists. And the government never started in high school in St. Thomas. Portland had two high schools, Happy Grove at one end by the Quakers and Titchfield on the other end.
Yeah.
Which was a trust school. Government wasn't in the business of starting high schools. That didn't fit their business plan. Black young men were to work in sugar cane piece, coffee piece, cocoa piece,
banana,
latterly. And so you're talking about people's rights. The right was held by the people with the land. They had the rights. And they had the right to get labor to work on their property. And therefore, Jamaican black people were undereducated. So that they could do nothing else but cut cane, weed banana, and throw fertilizer on cane land. So it's not just land that is the issue. There is education, and there is, well, we don't have to say that housing is also a part of it.
Oh, yes.
So basically, Jamaica was a creation as a plantation. Jamaica was created as a plantation. We were called Britain's overseas plantations.
Okay.
Jamaica was run by the Committee of Trade and Plantations of the British government. Nothing should be grown in Jamaica that could be grown in England. Because if it could be grown in England, they would grow it in England to provide jobs for Englishmen. It's only if it couldn't grow in England that it would grow in Jamaica, like sugar, for example.
Yeah.
The cane couldn't grow in England. And so you would chop down the cane, you would squeeze the juice, you would precipitate out the sugar. And then that's it, because you can send that to England, and England will refine it, turn it into white sugar, and into candy and sweetie and whatever else they use it for. But Jamaica couldn't have a refinery to make white sugar, because that would take away jobs from white people. And so Jamaica as a plantation economy existed to serve Britain to grow what couldn't grow in England. And that's why we never developed industry. Because if you developed industry, you'll be taking away jobs from white people in England.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
And so it was only after independence that we established our first white sugar refinery at Monmouth. Because we were not allowed to do it before. British government wouldn't allow it. It would take away jobs from England, from white people. So we talk about people's rights. We have to realize that we're coming out of a plantation system, and an independent Jamaican government has to look hard at the situation and say, how are we really going to come out of this plantation thing? The first thing we have to do is make sure every child can read and write by the time they are 10 years old. We don't do that. By the time they take what used to be called common entrance, then it was called GSAT, now it's called PEP. Very few, a percentage of children pass that. They can't read. They can't write a proper sentence. They can't do maths. They can't check. Why 60 years after independence we can't do that? Barbados has done it.
Oh yes.
Trinidad has done it. Cuba has done it. Guyana has done it. Why Jamaica can't do it? Because Jamaica is controlled still by the plantation people that don't want Jamaican black people to be able to read. That's a fact. And don't want Jamaican black people to have land, because then they won't want to work on the plantation or wherever. They will go on their land and become independent. So, and both the PNP and the JLP have colluded with the plantation class and the business class to keep Jamaican labor unskilled and unlettered. Because, you know, if Jamaican labor can read and write, they're going to want more wages.
Oh yes.
And the business people don't want to pay more wages. So why we can't train our people to read and write? Because it doesn't suit the business class for Jamaicans to read and write.
That's why
But you know, whether you vote for the PNP or the JLP is the same thing you're voting for, you know. That's what them are.
Oh yes.
The same.
It's a one vote.
Don't believe that there is any political solution to this in sight. So, of the top 30 high schools in Jamaica, only 2 of them are government. All the rest are either church owned or owned by trusts. Government, no Jamaican government has ever seriously invested in top quality education. when Jamaica became independent in 62, and the government of the day went to the World Bank for a loan to build schools, because we only had 41 high schools in 1962. 41.
Mm.
They said, okay, we're going to build 60 more schools. So what kind of school are we going to build? Because how did the children get into the 41 high school? They have to take common entrance.
Right, yes.
And if they pass the common entrance, they go to high school. So we're going to build 40 new schools now. But they said, okay, well, we're going to build 40 schools, but if they, but we're going to make them below the standard. So nobody will pass common entrance and go to any of these new schools, like Popine High, Mona High, Marcus Garvey High, Haile Selassie High. All of these schools, not Port Antonio High, Buff Bay High, and so on. These schools, to get in, you fail the common entrance. You don't get to go to a big school, so you go to these schools as a consolation. And that decision in the 1960s, if we had decided instead of building schools for people to fail common entrance to go in, if we had decided to build schools for them to pass common entrance to go in, where would Jamaica be today? So it's the governments after independence, not the Englishman, that have kept down Jamaican black people to this day. And the churches are the ones that have built schools of excellence for Jamaican people.
This is very, very, very powerful revelation. Know why we are so far behind? Because we are so far behind everybody in education, and I guess without land and education, we are at the bottom of the pile.
So people realized early that they had to get a good education. And then after that, they had to get out fast, migrate. And so my class that I graduated in high school in 1968, the vast majority of my class migrated.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that is still the case.
Oh, yeah.
That even the money that we spend on high schools is wasted in a way, because the graduates leave the country and don't stay and build the economy, don't build the country.
Yeah, we have to look. It become an individual situation where we have to look for ourselves, so everybody leave. And now we are having more people leave, and we are having trained people leaving, and none coming back.
Well, there's a demand side to that, because the US apparently has a shortage of teachers and nurses.
Oh, yes.
And so they come to Jamaica and they take our teachers and nurses and pay them 10 times as much or 15 times as much.
Yeah.
We can't afford to pay our teachers properly or our nurses. So every year there's this big sucking sound as people jump on the plane and fly away.
But let me hear your opinion on this. I personally feel that the government probably not necessarily wants the people to leave, but they don't mind when they leave, because it balances out back with remittance.
Well, that's true. I wouldn't say they want them to leave, but everything has an upside.
Yes.
And the upside is, as you say, remittances, because somebody has to be left behind. Because if nobody is left behind, then there's nobody to send the remittance for.
True. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the government doesn't want everybody to leave. They only want the ones who can earn money, big money, to leave.
Right.
So that they can send back money for the poorer ones.
Yeah.
my family all left, but nobody sent no money to me. So I don't know how that system works. But
But we know
there you
money is
go.
coming back. We know money is coming back.
It is Jamaica's third largest source of foreign exchange
Yes.
after tourism and I forget what the second one is.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was the second. I heard that it was number two.
It could be the second.
Yeah,
So tourism would be one and the remittances would be two.
two. Yeah, yeah. Line items. Could you explain a trust
So
school?
therefore, in the news now is people capturing land and the owners of the land bulldoze them.
Yes, yes,
So you say rights in your title.
yes.
Well, the man who owns the land say, I have rights, I have rights over my land. And these people are coming in here taking away my rights by capturing my land. So I want my rights. Come off. So whose rights are you defending? And then it's like when I used to live in a certain place. People from across my back fence used to come and thief my ackee. And when I asked them why them thief the ackee, them say, it's not my ackee, it's God make the ackee grow.
Okay.
So they feel they had the right to come and
Right.
take my ackee.
Mm-hmm.
So I look over my back fence and I see a big star apple tree over there. So I say, well, you know what I go and do? I go and come across and take some of your star apple off of your star apple tree. You can't do that. It's my star apple tree. I said, but you can't have it both ways.
No, yes. Mm-hmm.
Your star apple tree is yours, but my ackee tree is not mine.
It's yours too, yeah.
So we're talking about rights. So let us say, my brother, that poor people got land. And then somebody come and try to capture part of that land. Those same poor people will want to run them off of their land.
Oh, yes.
So the people who own these lands now have people capturing it and they say they run them off, bulldoze them off. So who is in the right? Who has the rights? So rights is a thing that everybody has, And we have to balance rights. That is what justice is. It's balancing your rights and my rights. And that is not always easy.
No. There's a situation where people have been living, 40, 50 years on a piece of land. No owner in sight. And then after the 50 years, the owner shows up and said, this is my land.
I have a right.
Yeah. Yes.
And the other people say, but I have a right too, because I've been here for 50 years.
Years, yeah.
So the government makes a rule and says, if you're on it for, I forget the certain number of years, you can claim squatters' rights.
But does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
It's called adverse possession.
Mm-hmm.
And thousands of people get land that way. As long as I can hide and thief on your land, and you don't see, and you don't send me a notice, what is called undisturbed possession,
Yes.
then I can claim it after a certain number of years. But must it come to that? If we know our history, and we know that we're coming from slavery, we're coming from a situation where people were forcibly uprooted from their homeland and brought here on slave ships, and then set free eventually with no land, no education.
Nothing.
Is that right? He said, no, there's reparations due. And I agree. Those who were enslaved and their descendants are owed reparations from the people that enslaved them. But the reparations people go further. They say, But colonialism also impacted us. So we also are owed reparations from the colonial government.
Right.
And I say, but independent Jamaican governments, the PNP and the JLP, mash up our independence. PNP and the JLP was reparations for how they have mishandled independence. 60 years and we don't have people reading and writing. The PNP and the JLP was reparations. Of course, them don't agree with that. And the big people who are calling for reparations is the PNP and the JLP because they want the money.
Yes, yes.
When we became independent in 1962, Jamaica did not owe $1 to anybody. The British government gave us independence free of debt. In the 60 years since independence, we have become one of the most indebted countries in the world.
Yes.
With a debt to GDP ratio of something like 120%. Must be only Greece higher than us and a few other countries.
Yes.
And the government is saying, we want reparations, pay off the debt, cancel the debt. And I say that if the debt canceled tomorrow, and we're gone back to zero debt, within 20 more years, we're gone up back again to have one of the highest debts in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because the governments that we have are borrow and spend governments.
Yes, yes.
And the PNP and the JLP owe us reparations. I agree, the British owe us reparations. There's no argument about that. But the PNP and the JLP owe us reparations too.
Do you see anywhere in the future where we'll get rid of the Westminster system?
Well, the Westminster system is a system where the Queen is the state and the cabinet is largely made up of MPs.
Yes.
That are taken from the legislature and made into cabinet ministers. Whereas in the American system, you elect the president and then he selects his cabinet from the best brains in the country. So you're asking me if we're ever going to have a cabinet made up of the best brains of the country, or whether we're going to be stuck with a cabinet that has to come from the MP for this and the MP for that.
For that, yeah.
Well, that is what you call constitutional reform. And you're asking me if we will ever have constitutional reform? I don't know. I would like it. But the politicians that we have now seem to love what we have.
That is the
Because they
problem.
love being called right honorable and most honorable.
Yes.
Have all kind of letters after their name. I don't see Barack Obama and Joe Biden have any letter after them name.
Yes.
We don't say the right honorable Barack Obama. Why Jamaican people want to be called right honorable so-and-so? Where them get that from? It's from the British Westminster system. They love it.
Well, it's even gone bigger than that now because they also have the most. They have attached the most to somebody.
It was P.J. Patterson who did that.
Okay.
The prime ministers up to him were just simply called honorable.
Yeah.
And he passed a law where all prime ministers are automatically given the national honor of the Order of the Nation, ON, which carries with it most honorable.
Mm-hmm.
This is the PNP that said we must get rid of the Queen, bringing in more titles on top of it. They don't want to get rid of the Queen. They don't want to get rid of Crown Land. They don't want to get rid of, I mean, look, in the United States, where you are, if somebody discover gold in his land, who the gold belong to? Him. If him discover oil in his land, who the oil belong to? Not him.
Yes.
But in Jamaica, if somebody find gold on their land, it belongs to the crown. I only own the surface of my land, you know. I don't own what is under it. And if oil is found on my land, the oil belongs to the crown, and I have to come off. If bauxite is found in my land, the bauxite belongs to the government. That's the Westminster system, you know. That's the monarchical system.
That's what we
They love that. They're not going to get rid of that.
Yeah, we need to get rid of it somehow.
They're not going to get rid of it because the politicians that we have love it.
Oh yes, we know
Every
that.
cabinet minister is a little king.
Oh yes, we know that.
In his ministry.
Yes.
Don't have to give any explanation to anything. So you're asking me if I ever think we'll have it? Well, I answered you in two ways. I said I would love it, but then I said that I didn't think so.
Yes.
Because I don't think that the people that we have want it.
Want to give up
I don't
what
see, I don't think that they love the power that the Westminster system gives them.
And therein lies one of our major problems.
Right.
Well, thank you very much.
You're most welcome, my brother.
Yeah, man. And you know, we will speak again, and we will invite you back.
Happily.
But you have a lot to let us know about. I think one of the problems.
God bless you and your listeners.
Yeah, one of the problems in Jamaica too is that we are so I don't know, we are so closed up. We don't have a broad understanding of where we are or what took place by who, you know.
Right.
Because all these things you are telling us this morning, incredible. And I know a lot of people don't know about it. Before you go though, could you explain to me a trust school?
It's just a question of who owns a school.
Okay.
So in Jamaica, there are three types of owners. The church can own it. School like Campion College, St. George's College, Immaculate High School, St. Andrews, St. Hugh's, Fern Court, not Fern Court, KC, not JC. These schools are owned by churches.
Yeah.
Owned and operated by churches. Then you have trusts that own schools. The Woolmer's Trust, the Titchfield Trust, the Monroe and Dickinson's Trust that own Monroe and that other school in Malvern. You have Monroe for boys and the other one for girls.
Yeah, okay.
In Malvern. And you also have the Rossi's Trust that owns Rossi's High School. And you have the Manning's Trust that owns Manning's in Savlamar. These are trust schools owned by trusts, endowed by wealthy people.
Yes.
And they own and operate their schools. And then you have government schools that are owned by the government of Jamaica. Schools like Papine High, Mona High, Petersfield High. Cornwall College actually is a government-owned school,
okay.
As is Montego Bay High School. They were the first school started by the government. And also Jamaica College, even though Jamaica College started under the Drax Trust, the Drax Trust was broken. And Jamaica High School and eventually Jamaica College is a government-owned school at the moment. They have a trust. Campion has a trust, but that doesn't make it a trust school.
Okay.
A trust school is a school that is owned by a trust and operated by the trust through its board.
Okay. So how that fits in with the Ministry of Education?
The Ministry of Education provides funding for schools, and those schools are called grant-aided schools or grant-in-aid schools. So they fund all their schools, all the government high schools. But the trust schools, some of the trust schools and some of the church schools accept funding from the ministry.
Okay.
So Campion accepts funding, that's a church school. Titchfield accepts funding. That's a trust school.
You're right, yeah.
And in exchange, the government sends you 95% of the children, and it has certain control over policy. Not all policy, but some policy.
Yeah, some, yeah.
Because after all, it's my school. If I own the school, so you can't tell me how I must run my prayers, my devotion. Because that is my school, so that's my decision. Frankly, neither can you tell me what subjects I must teach in my school. So the government's role inside a church school and a trust school is not the same role that it has in a government-owned school.
Okay.
But this is a subject for another day, my brother.
Yes,
because we have gone for an hour now.
Yeah, man. Definitely.
We would have to come back another day and talk about that a little more.
Yes, thank you very, very much.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. We will speak again. Yes, thank you very much.
God bless you and your listeners, as I said before.
Yes, thank you all. Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You lead us to full. You belong the way I was. Ajuguala lebabu seru. Lida mua, lida sungfula. Lida mua, lida sungfula.
Well, unfortunately, this is it. Till next time. Bless.
All you gotta do is just speak. One word is enough, and I'm no longer so rough. I forget what I was trying to say. I no longer do what I was gonna do, but you're no good for me. That's why me do what set me a pick a flee. Me I fi take away me say. Me I fi take away me say. Me I fi hide like a thief in the night. Me I fi get out of sight. Me I fi take away myself. I fi take away myself. I have to utilize I will.